So as you guys can see, we have this on. Now we're gonna start putting the actual bracket on with the supercharger, like the actual blower, all the piping, all the lines, and eventually we're gonna fill up the rad with coolant, and then we're gonna try to start the car as well. So we're gonna now put this bracket on. All right, guys, so hopefully this time the car starts. Fingers crossed. 3, 2, 1. Started. Finally. Only took like a month. Okay, so last night, as you guys saw, we started the car up. We just couldn't run it for a bit because there's no radiators, no coolant running through it, so we ran it briefly for like 20 seconds or so. And now what we're gonna do, I just put the radiator on, so quickly just attached the 2 hoses, and I filled it up with some water. I'm gonna add a little bit more water, and then we're gonna start the car up and let it run for a while, see if everything works. The engine runs. We ran it for about 20-25 minutes there. Ran water through it just because we obviously took the rad off again, so there's no point putting coolant in just to dump it. I checked all the values with the scanner, so like the fuel pressure, the air intake temperature, coolant temperature, the fan coming on, everything works perfectly. But it wasn't that easy. So going back a couple weeks, we tried to start the car. It would crank and crank and crank and it wouldn't start. So the first issue was the timing, and what we thought that was related to the actual camshaft. So what we ended up doing, pulling the heads off, taking out the Vanos bolts, retiming the cams, putting the gears back on, bolting them in again, over and over again. Didn't solve the problem. And then the second issue that we thought it could be was the transmission. So where the flywheel actually goes on, that had to be pulled off. The flywheel had to be put back on. This time around, lining up the dowel on the crank with the bigger hole on the flywheel. Once we got that done, put it back together, and eventually we put that back on, tried to crank it, and it finally started up. So just kind of troubleshooting all those things, but it finally works. So now that the car started, essentially the biggest thing's out of the way. So we're gonna go on to all the other things. So we still have to put on the brake calipers. We've got to put on the vacuum pump, which needs to be welded on. We got to put the diff in. There's tons of little odds and ends that need to get done. So we're gonna start with the diff. Basically, I got the diff sandblasted and all the seals replaced. And now we're just gonna spray it so it doesn't rust again. And then we'll throw the diff in. After that, we'll start with the calipers, possibly fill it with brake fluid, bleed the brakes. Right now, we're just taping off all the flanges that don't get paint. And then we're gonna spray some primer and some paint on the actual body of the diff, so you guys will see how that goes. Use a, yeah. So I'm gonna prime first, and then we'll paint. Okay, so while we're waiting for the diff to dry, Kean's over here just cleaning all the pads up, all the pins that go through, and we're gonna start putting all the pads in so that we can bolt the calipers on. And then as soon as this is fully dry, we'll spray that black as well. So in the meantime, we're gonna get the calipers ready. Oh, you're off, bud. That's more than enough.
So we assembled the brake kit, figured out the proper brackets, got the pads, the pins in, and then put the actual mounting bracket on. So now we're gonna mount it. They won't go right on, so we do have to do a little bit of modification and cutting the shield. That way that this can fit in, or else this will rub and the shield won't actually allow them on. Never have trouble putting it in the hole, buddy. You should know that.
I shouldn't.
So now that we got the calipers on the car, as you can see both front and rear, we're gonna put the diff in. But what we had to do was we unmasked all the stuff off the diff. It looks good, it's dried, so it's ready to go in. We just kind of have to lift it into its place and put the 3 bolts in, tighten them down, and that should be that.